A few years ago, I was selling my bike on Facebook Marketplace. And when I say bike, I mean bicycle, not motorcycle. This one was nice though. It was like $1,000 bike and in great condition. I live near the city and I had just got it a few years prior. I used it a lot, not only to get around, but also for exercise. However, I now had a car and the bike was taking up too much space. So I listed it at $700, but was realistically going to accept as low as $500 for it. For the first couple of days, there was not much interest. Then finally a guy messaged me and said that he would take the bike. I found it interesting how he didn't ask if it was available still or try to negotiate. All he said was, "I'll take it." This was good though, because maybe he would pay the full price. So I arranged a time and location for us to complete the sale, and he agreed to it all. I chose the location as a shopping center parking lot not too far away from my work that was kind of on the way home. I told the guy when I usually got out of work, and I said I would let him know when I was off and he could head over then. He said he was not that far away and that was fine with him. So I got off work a little late but was done by about 6 o'clock. Then I texted the guy and I drove to the location. I had the bike in the back of my car, which luckily fit because I have an SUV, but I did have to take the front wheel off. So when I got to the shopping center, it was very quiet. The parking lot was huge, a lot larger than is needed for the few stores that are there. The main store is a grocery store, and there weren't really any cars that were near me. I got out, and as I waited for the man, put the wheel back on the bike. He said he was on his way, but I was still waiting a sort of long time. Then, kind of out of nowhere, I saw this guy come walking through the parking lot. He was about average height, skinny, pretty young looking, and had a buzz cut. His clothes were baggy, and overall the guy seemed a little bit sketchy. I wasn't quite sure where he had come from, but he introduced himself to me and shook my hand. He seemed really friendly right off the bat, and it put me at ease. After a little bit of small chit-chat, the guy saw the bike and said that it looked great. He said how he had been looking for a nice bike to ride around the city. The guy told me that he needed a means of transportation. He said he had the cash on him, and he just wanted to sit on the bike and see how it felt. I told him to go ahead. I trusted him. Well, the guy got onto the bike and said that he wanted to test it out for a second. Then he very quickly started riding away through the parking lot about as fast as he could. I realized that he was stealing my bike. I very quickly ran to my car, got in, and started it up. I saw the guy still going through the parking lot. Because things were so quiet, I was able to quickly drive through the parking lot after him. I saw which street he was going down. Now, this area is a little outside the city. This meant that there were not as many places the guy could go, and the roads were not quite as busy. So it would be easier for me to follow the man, and he didn't have a lot of alleyways he could ride down or sidewalks. It was pretty much just roads and some businesses, but off the roads was either parking lots or grass. There were some sidewalks, but they just went along the roads. So, as nice as my bike was, I could obviously go much faster than the guy in my car. I caught up to him as he rode my bike to the end of that street. I honked at him, but he ignored me. Then he turned, and I turned as well. I thought about calling the cops, but I figured I would follow him for a while and see where he was going, and hoped that maybe he would give it up. After turning, the guy looked back at me and then tried to go faster. I was still able to keep up with him though. We went down that street for a while and then turned again. He turned quickly a couple of times and I nearly lost him. I obviously couldn't make quick turns like he could. Then he also went through a red light, which luckily he didn't get hit by a car, but I had to wait for the light. When it turned, I kept following him. I caught back up, and a while later he turned off into a neighborhood. This neighborhood was not very nice, but it was very large. The whole chase had been going for like 5 minutes now. He rode down one street and then turned. I nearly lost him. Then he went down another street, and just as I turned on it, I saw him going up a driveway. I watched him ride the bike into the front yard, and then he got off, opened the front door to a house, and brought the bike inside the house. All the houses and yards on this street were small and not very nice, and there were quite a few of them. I drove down the street and kept my eye on the house, and then I pulled into the driveway. Then I got out, walked up to the front door, and started knocking on it. There was no answer at first, which did not surprise me. I kept banging on the door though, and I yelled at him to open. I threatened to involve the police. Nobody answered still, but I was not going away. Then, finally, after like 5 minutes, I heard someone inside. They walked over to the front door and then opened it, but the man was not there. It was a different guy who looked annoyed and asked me what my problem was and why I kept banging on the door. I told him that I saw a guy who stole my bike enter the house. He claimed that he didn't know what I was talking about. I asked him if he lived there and he said yes, this was his house. I asked him who else lived there and he claimed no one did. I told him that I knew I saw a guy go into the house there. The guy claimed that he knew nothing about it and that I had to leave. I didn't want to, but I couldn't barge into the house. The guy slammed the door in my face and locked it. I knew that guy probably was just the other guy's friend and obviously was covering for him. I walked back to my car in the driveway thinking of what I should do next. I could stay there and keep harassing these guys, or I could call the police. Right as I was arriving back at my car though, I heard something behind me. I looked and saw the guy who stole my bike. He was coming out of the small backyard that the house had. Then he stopped and threw a rock at me. It missed, but I quickly got back in my car to protect myself. He then threw another rock which hit my car. Then he threw another. I backed out of the driveway, and when I was leaving, I saw the guy turn and run off into the backyard and out of my sight. Then I called the cops. I wasn't going to sit there and let him throw rocks at me. The cops got to the house like 10 minutes later. I told them everything that happened, and they knocked on the door of the house. It turned out that the guy who answered the door for me did live there, and he rented the house with a roommate. But neither of the people on the lease was the guy that stole my bike. He was a friend of them though, so the guy was lying to me. I guess the guy who stole my bike was just staying at the house or something, or maybe he was just friends of theirs and decided to go there after stealing it. Nevertheless, he was gone now and he left on my bike. I went home disappointed and figured that I had lost out. I was hopeful that the police would find my bike, but I didn't really think it would happen realistically. I mean, the guy could be anywhere by then, and it was just a bike. It's not like it was some $1 million car. However, as a try, I scoured both Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist as well as eBay for my bike over the next few days. I thought there was a good chance he might try to sell it quick, seeing as though it was hot. But there was also a good chance that he would use it to flee the city, or he would hide it. However, 4 days later, I saw a listing on Craigslist. It was 100% my bike. The city was the same one that the guy had been in, and it was the exact same make and model that my bike was. I told my friend Jake about it, and he texted the guy saying that he wanted to buy the bike. The guy was selling it at $450, which would guarantee to sell quick. When Jake texted him, thankfully he hadn't sold it yet and agreed to sell it to Jake. So the next night was the arranged sale. I drove Jake there and we knew what we had to do. The meeting point was another parking lot across town. When we got there, sure enough, there the guy was with my bike. It was the same man who stole it. I parked kind of far away and made sure that he wouldn't see me. Jake got out and I was really nervous. I saw them shake hands as I stayed hidden in the car. Then Jake pretended to look at the bike. At once, he hopped on it and took off. The guy started running after him, but Jake was gone. I started the car and began driving out of the parking lot. Jake went down the street and the guy could not keep up. I saw him stop running and the man was now walking along the side of the road. I drove by the guy, honked my horn, and waved goodbye as he gave me the double bird. Then I drove a few blocks over and picked up Jake and my bike. I'm glad that I got it back and I decided not to sell the bike anymore. I still have it, and I can't believe that we were able to steal it back. However, I would not recommend doing something like that. It could have been dangerous. Looking back, it probably would have just been a better idea to notify the police of the bike being for sale. Either way, I'm glad that the man didn't get away with it. Last year, I was looking to buy a new car. I knew that I wanted to buy one used because I didn't want to make car payments. I just wanted to buy a sort of old one with cash. This can be a risk, but my dad has taught me a lot about cars over the years. I'm able to drive one and look at it, and I can usually tell overall if it's alright or not. If I'm serious about buying it, I will take it to a local mechanic and they can confirm that the car has nothing wrong with it. So I looked on a few websites and I did some Google searches. I was just looking for something like a Toyota Camry or any decent sedan. Maybe something 10 years old with not a crazy amount of miles. Soon my searches took me to Facebook Marketplace. I was looking at cars there, and I came across a listing that caught my attention. It was a 2015 Camry that had 88,000 miles on it. The photos were kind of bad quality, and they appeared to be taken at night. There also wasn't that much information on the car. However, it did make a point to say that it ran great and needed no work. I decided that it was worth looking at, and if I liked it, possibly buying. I contacted the seller, a man named John. He responded to me saying that the car was still available. I asked him if I would be able to look at it, and he said yes. I suggested a date and time, and at first he agreed to it. It was the following evening at 5:30 p.m. That way I could go on my way home from work. I asked where we would meet, and the guy said his house. However, he didn't give me his address right away. Overall, in our conversations of texting on Facebook, he wasn't the best communicator. But he did agree to his house at 5:30 the following day. When I was almost done with work the next day, I texted him to confirm. The guy said that he was working late and that he was going to have to push the time back a bit. I said fine, no problem. He then said 7 o'clock. I said okay to that and went home after work, awaiting the man to text me again. Then at 7, he rescheduled again to 8. Then at 8, changed it to 9. I was getting annoyed, and it was getting late. Finally, at 8:30, he texted me an address and said that I could go there. I didn't know why he kept pushing the time back. I thought maybe he was working late or maybe something else, but I didn't ask. So I drove to the house, which was a ways away. It was this really quiet neighborhood that had tons of small houses in it. The area seemed kind of creepy. I mean, the houses were all beat up looking. I parked and saw the house number to confirm the address. The house looked pretty average for the neighborhood. There was a driveway, but no cars in it at all. So I assumed the car that I was looking at must be in the garage or something. I texted that I was there, and John responded saying to come to the door and ring the doorbell. That seemed strange because obviously the car was not inside the house. Still, I did what he said. I left my car, walked up to the front step, and rang the doorbell. Not long after ringing, the door opened, but nobody was there. It was like whoever opened the door quickly moved away. I looked inside, and it was pitch dark. All the lights appeared to be off, and I did not see or hear anyone. I stood there just looking around. About 30 seconds later, I heard a man's voice yell from somewhere deep inside the house and to the left. He said, "Come in." I said, "I'm just here to look at the car." He said, "I know, come in." I was feeling pretty sketched out in this moment. I said, "Actually, I think I'll just wait outside for you." I didn't know why I would have to go inside his house to look at the car. Again, there's no way that he had that car inside the house with him, so I'm not going in there. And it looked suspicious as can be. But the guy yelled at me again to come in. At that point, I did walk in, but just a step. It was really just so I could look around more. The guy was not in sight. But then again, I really could not see anything in there at all other than a few feet in front of me. It was just too dark. All the lights were out. I stood there for a minute or so, looking around, and it was quiet. Then the man angrily yelled at me to come in. It really creeped me out. It was much louder than he had yelled at me before, and much more angry. I instantly turned around, walked out of the house, and left. I drove home and then blocked the guy on Facebook. I didn't go back on there and instead got a car on Craigslist. I'm not sure why the guy wanted me to enter the house so bad, but I think it was a trap. Maybe he wanted to rob me or kidnap me. And I never saw the car there. I'm glad that I left when I did. A while back, I was selling a bunch of electronics on Facebook Marketplace. I'm not a dealer or professional seller or anything like that. It was more of a situation where I was just going through all my electronics and I was planning on moving soon. I had never gotten rid of anything really, and there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't use, so I decided to sell it all at once. I was selling a couple of Apple laptops, 2 TVs, an old cell phone, as well as some speakers and a couple of other small things. If everything sold, I would make a couple $1,000. I listed everything at pretty reasonable prices. Well, literally the next day, I got a couple of messages. The first one was from this one woman. She told me that she wanted to buy one of the laptops. I told her that was fine and gave her my address. I said she could come by the next afternoon if she wanted to, and she agreed. So I lived by myself in a house that I was renting at the time. It was kind of small, but like I said, I was going to be moving pretty soon into something a little nicer. So I didn't correspond much with the woman other than to tell her my address and a time. The next day she showed up and I was ready to sell her the laptop. She looked fairly young, but nothing seemed strange about her. I let her in my house and had the laptop on a table near the door. She saw it and looked at it, and I showed her that it turned on and off and worked fine. She mentioned that she saw I was selling some other stuff as well and that she might be interested in that too. I had all the stuff there in the living room in a few boxes. I asked her what in particular, and she said nothing yet, but maybe later. I said okay, and the woman then said that she needed to think about buying the laptop. Then she said bye and left. I was disappointed not to make a sale. I really thought that she would buy the laptop, but it happens. I figured I would easily be able to sell the stuff. I already had received a couple of messages about various things that I was selling. Nothing had materialized yet though. So for the rest of the day, I didn't meet with anyone else or anything. That night, however, I was awoken in the middle of the night. The first thing I remember after waking up is hearing a knock at my front door. I looked at the clock and it was nearly 2 a.m. I didn't know why anybody would be at my door so late. I got up and then left my bedroom. As I did, the knocking not only continued but got louder. Before opening the front door though, I went to a window to look out and see who was there. I'm not going to lie, I was pretty nervous. When I looked out though, I saw 3 men standing aggressively right outside my front door. They were banging on it and right there, like if I opened the door they were going to rush me. I did not open the door. They kept banging on it though. Then I heard them trying to open it as well. I heard one of the guys yell that he heard me. He yelled for me to open the door now. I did not. Instead, I ran to my bedroom and then locked myself in there. Admittedly, I did not have anything to defend myself with. I called the cops and hid in my room. They continued banging on the door and trying to get in. This went on for what felt like forever, but probably 5 minutes. Then I heard them stop kind of suddenly, and maybe a minute later the cops got there. So I think they knew that the cops were coming. I went out and told the officers everything that I knew. They looked around but did not find the men, whoever they were. They must have left. I was just grateful that they didn't get in. The next day I went out and bought security cameras. After thinking about it, I think they knew the woman who looked at my stuff, though I can't prove it. The men never came back, and the woman never messaged me again and didn't show up. It is my belief that she knew I had all those electronics and went to my place to scope it out. Then she told those goons that I would be good to rob. They probably were going to rush me if I opened the door. I didn't live there much longer and was glad to leave. I unlisted all my electronics as well after that and waited and then sold them in my new city instead. This is something that happened back when I was looking to buy a phone on Facebook Marketplace. For some background, I was a 21-year-old woman at the time and needed a new cell phone. My iPhone was old, outdated, and also out of storage. It only had 64 gigabytes on it. So I knew that I could get one cheap on Facebook Marketplace, as I didn't have the money to buy a brand new cell phone. I looked around and found one pretty quickly that seemed like a good deal. It was not too good to be true, but still a good price. I contacted the seller through Facebook and was told that it was still available. I was glad to hear that and said that I wanted to buy it. So the guy told me that I could come over and pick it up. This was the first red flag. I knew that it could be dangerous to go to a stranger's house to buy something. So I actually offered to meet at a public place instead. But the guy said no. He had an excuse though, saying that his car was broken and he just couldn't get out right now. I didn't want to pry into his personal business and figured that it would not be a big deal, so I said okay. We arranged for a time, which was the following evening. He gave me his address, which I drove to. It was an apartment complex about 15 minutes away. It was really old and crappy, one of the worst apartment buildings I've ever seen, and it was in a bad part of town too. So that was the second red flag. Still, I went on anyways. I let him know that I was there, and he buzzed me in. His apartment was on the 4th floor, and I took the stairs up because the elevator was broken. The whole building looked really bad. I got up to his door and knocked on it. He quickly opened it. He had sort of long, greasy-looking hair. He had big glasses and wore a large t-shirt and shorts. The guy gave me a bad vibe right off the bat. He told me to come in, and he seemed really awkward but also creepy. Some guys are just shy, and that's fine, but this guy was just awkward in a creepy way. He made small talk a bit with me, and I wasn't too creeped out yet, but his apartment was super messy. There was clutter everywhere, and it smelled bad. He asked me if I lived nearby and how old I was and a few other basic questions. I answered him with brief answers, but I didn't see the phone anywhere. I asked him if he had it, and he said yes. Then he told me to follow him, which I did not like. I was hoping that he would have just had it there. I followed him through the living room, down a small hallway, and then into a bedroom. As we were walking, he said out of nowhere maybe we should hang out sometime. I just kind of laughed and said, "Oh, maybe." Then we got to his bedroom, and he said he keeps all his phones in the closet. This was another weird thing. He opened this door, which was a pretty large closet. I saw inside there was a pile of like 100 cell phones on the ground. He had all sorts. iPhones, Androids, both old and new. They were just there on the floor in a pile and not organized at all. I asked him why he had so many phones. He said he likes to collect them, but also sell them and make a few bucks. Then he told me that he has his methods of getting them that some people may frown upon. I didn't know what he meant by this, but the way he said it seemed like he was insinuating that he stole them or something. I was just like, okay. Then he dug around and found the iPhone. He showed it to me and asked if this was the one that I wanted. I didn't even remember at that point anymore, but I just said yes. In reality though, I no longer wanted to buy it. I held the phone pretending to look at it. He told me it works fine and he had wiped it clean and jailbroke it. Then out of nowhere he asked me if I wanted to spend the night at his place. It was so random and also creepy. I said no thanks, I had plans. Then he said maybe another time, and I said yeah, maybe. Really I just wanted to get out of there. I quickly thought on my feet. I said that I forgot the cash in my car and I would get it real quick. I acted like I was really disappointed and upset, and I think my acting was good because it seemed like he believed me. Really, I had the cash in my pocket. So I walked out and I said that I would be right back and then left. He stayed in his apartment. As soon as I got out, I sprinted out of the building, ran to my car, and drove home. I blocked him and got off of Facebook. Looking back at that, it was really creepy. I don't know what was going on there, but I'm glad I left when I did. A while back, I was selling an iPad on Facebook Marketplace. I took a few pictures of it and then posted the listing online. I remember that sometime the next day, I got a message from somebody on Facebook about it. However, it was not what I expected. The person's profile was a creepy picture of a clown, and their name was just Clown. I thought that it was kind of weird, but they asked if the iPad was still available. I said yes. I thought that maybe the person was young or had that profile as a joke or something. They said that they wanted to buy it and asked me when they could. This person seemed normal enough through our messages, so I said they could buy it. We agreed to the next day at 6 p.m. I gave this clown person my address, which looking back I should not have done. I didn't think of it at the time, but that could be a dangerous thing. I lived in a house with my wife and child, and I didn't think that anything bad could happen. I would be home the whole time and was just going to sell an iPad quickly. The following evening at 6 p.m., no one showed up. I texted the clown on Facebook and asked him if he was still coming. He never responded. This happens though. There's people all the time that say they'll buy something and then they never show up. It's rude to make an appointment and not even let me know that you're not going to be there, but still, it happens. The night went on and I got no response and nobody showed up. I was curious to see who this person even was, because their Facebook profile was just them dressed as a creepy looking clown. So that same night, I happened to be up late. I'm a bit of a night owl and it was probably like 11 o'clock p.m. I saw that I got a message on Facebook from the clown. I thought that maybe he was going to say why he didn't come earlier, but instead he said, "I'm here." I was confused. I thought maybe he had been there earlier and the message didn't show up until now for some reason. I texted back saying, "Wait a minute, are you here right now at 11 p.m.? He did not respond. I got up and walked over to the living room. I looked out of a window and saw the clown there. There was this creepy looking clown just standing in our front yard looking at the house. I looked out of the window and saw him there. There was a creepy looking clown just standing in our front yard looking at the house. He was just standing there not moving. It was really creepy. I texted the guy again, but he didn't answer. I could see that he was not on his phone. I went over to the door and opened it just a crack. I yelled out to the guy asking why he was here so late. He did not respond. He just stood there staring at me. I told him I wasn't going to sell him the iPad now. I asked him to come back at a normal hour and not dressed as a clown. Still, he said nothing and just kept standing there staring at me. I was too creeped out. Then he started to walk slowly towards me. I quickly shut the door, locked it, and walked away from the door and walked over to the window again. I watched him and he walked up the driveway a bit and then turned around and walked back. He got to the street and then slowly walked away. When he was out of my sight, I went on Facebook and told him not to come back. Thankfully, he didn't. I never saw him again, but I stopped using Facebook Marketplace after that.